But he, desiring to justify himself, said to Jesus, "And who is my neighbor?" Can't you just hear an attorney doing this? Define neighbor. Love your neighbor as yourself. Can you give me a legal definition of the word neighbor? What is he asking? He's asking Jesus to significantly narrow those who are qualified to be loved by this man. So write this down. Here's the second question this guy asked. First question, how do I earn eternal life? Love God perfectly, love your neighbor completely. Second question, who do I have to love? Who do I have to love? It's like you're getting married and you sit down and you try and figure out who you're going to invite to your wedding, and then you have to figure out who you're not going to invite. Isn't that awkward? Who do we have to invite? Oh, you have to invite grandma. Oh, you have to invite Aunt so-and-so. Oh, you have to invite. And then there's this list of people who you just don't invite. This guy is trying to trim down the list of people who he is legally, by God's law, required to love. Who's my neighbor? Can we call that list down a bit together, Jesus? Why? Why is he doing that? You see, because he knows that he's failing at love. He knows when it comes to loving people that he's failing to secure eternal life according to the law. So what's he going to do about that? Well, he's going to protect his unloving behavior from God's scrutiny. He's protecting his unloving behavior from God's scrutiny by reasoning away his lovelessness and still in his own heart fulfilling the law. That's what he's trying to do. He's trying to do the minimum. He's trying to do the least. He wants low-cost love that doesn't demand that he do any more than he has to do, any more than he is doing. He's like the guy at the ring store who's about to propose to his girlfriend, and he says, "Do you have anything cheaper? Like, I love her, but I mean, give me like the bargain." That's the kind of love he's seeking to show to those around him. Who do I have to love? If you're honest, if I'm honest, this is what we do. This is what we do. In our own hearts, when we're faced with the reality that God expects us to be loving people, we fulfill that standard, with our kids and with our parents and, with our friends. But then there's this group of people who, deep down in our hearts, we feel like we shouldn't have to love them. And so we'll convince ourselves that we're loving people because of how we treat the people who love us. But then, deep in our hearts, we also try and significantly narrow the list of people who we have to love. In other words, we redefine neighbor too. If you're honest, you do this, and so do I. Based on what that person did, based on what that person said, based on what they haven't done for me, I am legally exempt from having to love you. Are you a loving person? Well, sure I am. Look at how I'm treating my grandmother. What about that other person? Well, they don't count. They're not on the list. This is what we do. Why aren't we more loving? It's because we ask the same question. Well, define neighbor. Let's shorten the list of people who I'm legally obligated to love. The question that he actually should have asked when he first asked, what must I do to earn eternal life, love God and people? He should have then asked, well, what must I do to be a loving person? But he didn't want the answer to that question. He wanted the answer to the question of how can I maintain the partial love that I'm showing and still be justified? That's what he wanted to do. John MacArthur, in reading this, says, this man should have felt deep conviction. He should have been penitent, broken, contrite, confessed his sin, cried out for mercy. But rather, he drowned out the fire of his own conscience. He drowned out the fire of conviction with the water of self-righteous pride. And if we do that, we'll never become as loving as Christ wants to make us. If in our hearts, listen, if in our hearts we reason our way to not having to show love to those people who are hard to love, we won't become loving.